In today's video, we will learn some basic concepts of Terraform. In our previous video, we have learned about how to install Terraform in Windows. So in today's video, we will learn some core concepts of Terraform, some basic concepts of Terraform. So let's proceed. Now, let us see what we are going to learn in this video. We will learn about the Terraform core concepts. We will learn creating service principal for Terraform and why do we need service principal for Terraform. Then we will learn about setting up storage account for Terraform Backend. So first of all, we need to learn about some Terraform core concepts. So in Terraform, we have something called as root module and child modules. So every Terraform folder structure consists of a root module. So root module consists of three main files. One is main.tf, variable.tf, and provider.tf. Now the main.tf of the root module is only used to invoke the child modules. So you can think of the main.tf of the root module as the uh, main function in C#. So in main function of C#, we do not write down any business logic. Rather we invoke rather we invoke the classes or the functions which incorporate the business logic. So here also in root module, the main.tf is actually used to invoke the child modules. It passes parameters to child modules and it invokes them. Apart from this, we have the variable.tf in the root module. So variable.tf consists of the variables and its data that we are going to use from main.tf. So while provisioning an infrastructure, there might be certain parameters which need to be changed over time. So that we put it in the form of variable and we put it in the variable.tf. For example, subscription. So for dev, we need to provision the infrastructure in a dev subscription. For QA, we need to provision it in QA subscription. So accordingly, the value of the variable in the variable.tf function will change for different environments. That is why we put that type of parameters in variable.tf. And that variable.tf is accessible in the main.tf function, the scope of those variables in the main.tf function, and also in the child modules. So if we make any change in one variable in the variable.tf, that will actually reflect in the root module and in the child module. Then we have the provider.tf function. So the provider.tf function mainly consists of the details of the cloud provider whose resources we are provisioning. For example, if we are provisioning Azure infrastructure, then that will consist of the details of the Azure RM provider. So this provider details is actually obtained from the Terraform documentation. For Azure, we need Azure RM. For AWS Cloud, Google Cloud, there are other providers. We will discuss on these in detail in our upcoming video. So here we are just dealing with the basics of this concepts. Also, the provider.tf consists of the details of the service principal that we are using for provisioning cloud infrastructure using Terraform. So since Terraform, so in my previous videos of Azure Active Directory, I have discussed that there are three types of identities: user groups and service principal. Out of which service principal is a type of identity which is used by applications in which human intervention is not involved. So if any application wants to make any change in Azure, at that time it will need a service principal for authenticating itself with the Azure Active Directory. So Terraform is an external tool. It is not a part of Microsoft. So whenever Terraform needs to make any changes in Azure, it is to authenticate itself with Azure. And service principal in this case is the most suitable type of identity. So we put the details of the service principal of Terraform in provider.tf. Apart from that, we also put the details of the backend where the Terraform state file is going to be stored. We will discuss it just in the next part of the video. So the backend is nothing but a storage account. It can be a storage account, it can be Terraform Cloud. However, for our simplicity, we are going to use storage account as a backend. Now that storage account is stored in a specific subscription in a specific resource group. So we put the details of that storage account, resource group and subscription in the provider.tf. So the provider.tf consists of three details. One is the uh, the cloud provider, the resource provider details, that is the Azure RM details. Then we have the Terraform service principal details, and then we have the backend details where the Terraform state file will be stored. Now comes the child module. So the child modules consist of the actual script of the resources. For example, and each child module consists of main.tf, output.tf, and variable.tf. For example, in a particular resource group, I want to provision a new resource group. I want to provision an app inside. I want to provision a key vault, a function app, a storage account. So these five different infrastructure I want to provision, including the resource group itself. So a new resource group will be created. Inside that, an app inside will come up. Inside that, storage account will come up, a key vault, and a function app. Now each of these resources will have its own script, okay, and that will be in the form of folders, and the name of the folders can be given by us. For example, for keyboard we can give a name, and we can create a folder named keyboard, and inside that we are going to write on the actual script for the keyboard. And each of these child module folders, for example the keyboard folder, is going to contain the main.tf, the output.tf, and the variable.tf, just like the root module. Now there can be other child modules, for example the storage account. So for the storage account also, it will be written in the form of a folder, and inside that we put a main.tf, output.tf, and variable.tf. The main.tf consists of the actual script of the storage account. The output.tf consists of the outputs given by that script. For example, when we create a storage account, we might need the ID of the storage account. So how can we pass that output to the main.tf of root module? That is done with the help of the output.tf. In the output.tf, we have to specify that property which we need to pass as output to the main.tf. That is the work of output.tf. And variable.tf, it has the same function as that of the root module. In the variable.tf, we put the variables, and there can be two types of variables: variables with default values, variables with no values. Variables with default values will be picked up from variable.tf. Variable with no values will be passed from the main.tf of root module. Now comes the state file. So whenever Terraform provisions an infrastructure, it creates something called as the state file. So in the state file, it puts all the details of the infrastructure that it is provisioned. The state file is the state or the condition of the present infrastructure. The state file is a very secure part. We can consider it is the heart of the Terraform infrastructure. If any changes occur in the state file, then Terraform will go completely out of sync of the infrastructure that it has provisioned. So the state file should not be tampered anytime. It is just to check the conditions of, just to check the present state of the configurations in much more detailed format. So that is the work of the Terraform state file. The Terraform state file gets saved with any name but with an extension of .tf state. Then comes backend. So backend is the place where the state file gets stored. So as I told you that the state file is a very secure file which maintains the state or condition of the Azure infrastructure. So the backend can be local, it can be remote, or it can be Terraform cloud. So local backend means what? It is our it is, I mean, the machine in which we are running Terraform. So for example, in my laptop, okay, so when I ran Terraform apply, a state file will be created and it will be stored in my own laptop itself. Remote or Terraform cloud. So remote backend means when I am storing the state file not in my laptop but in a storage account which is in cloud. And Terraform Cloud is a totally different product given by HashiCorp, where which we can leverage and where the state file will be stored. So that doesn't get stored in my local laptop. It doesn't get stored in my storage account. It gets stored in a completely different tool, which is called Terraform Cloud. So these are the three ways by which we can store Terraform state file. We should never store. We should avoid storing Terraform state file in our local laptop because it is, first of all, it is not secure, and secondly, when multiple teams are contributing to that infrastructure and using the same script, then they might need, then there would be change. I mean, when they make the, so when they make the changes, they will be impacting the same state file. So it's better to save the state file in a remote backend. So remote storing the state file in remote backend is needed when multiple teams are collaborating where multiple teams are collaborating to the same Terraform script. Now creating service principal for Terraform. So as I told you that uh, Terraform is an external tool from Azure. So it needs to authenticate itself to Azure before it can make any changes in Azure. And that is why service principal is needed for Terraform. So service principal is nothing but an app registration in Azure Active Directory which is used for authenticating Terraform with Azure, and details of the service principal is given in the provider.tf file in the root module. So as I discussed in the previous slide, that the root module consists of the main.tf, the provider.tf, and the variable.tf. So in the provider.tf we provide the details of the service principal for Terraform. So I'll quickly share my screen. So here is one service principal that I have created for Terraform. It is in the Active Directory. So here you can see Terraform-SPN, and these are the details that we put. So this is the client ID, and this is the object ID. Okay, so these are the details, and when we go into this client credentials, we will find out something called as the client secret. Okay, which whose value is not visible. So its value is visible only once when we create it. So once we create it, when we create a service principal, we must keep a copy of the secret. Otherwise once we save it, that secret will not be visible anymore. So we all we can do is to just renew the secret, but we will not be able to see the old one. So these are the details that we need: a client ID, object ID, and object ID to be put in the Terraform service, to be put in the provider. Now this now creating a service principal I have already discussed in my previous video, whose link I will be giving in the description, so you can check it out how to create a service principal from that video. As of now, it is understood that for Terraform we need a service principal. Now setting up Azure storage account for Terraform backend. Now, as I told you that when we create infrastructure, provision infrastructure with Terraform, uh, a state file gets created. So a state file stores the uh, complete details of the configuration that has been deployed, and the state file is a very secure file. So if I make any change by mistake, if I just open it in notepad plus plus, and if I make any change in that state file, then my Terraform script will not run anymore. Also my infrastructure will go totally out of sync of my Terraform script. So Terraform state file is a very secure file. It should not be tampered, it should not be changed. It can only be viewed to understand the internal details of the present infrastructure. Since the Terraform state file is so important, it is very important to store it in a secure place. As I discussed in my previous slide, the Terraform state file can be stored in three places. One is in the local, one is in the remote, which is a storage account, and the third is the Terraform cloud. We should avoid to store Terraform state file in local, that means in our laptop. We should store it in storage account, or we should store it in Terraform cloud. Here we are going to use Terraform storage account. So setting up a storage account is just like simply setting up a storage account. So here the storage account will be set up manually. Yes, so Terraform, although Terraform is infrastructure as a core and it is used for infrastructure automatically with script, but the initial steps are manual. So the storage account that we need for storing the state file is done manually. So I'll just quickly share my screen and show how to create a storage account. So storage account is just a simple storage account that we normally create. So this is a resource group that I have created. Inside this I'm going to create a storage account. So I already have a storage account where I am maintaining my state file. So I will create one more. I'll just go to create. So I select storage account. and I create and I click on Microsoft storage account. There are many other storage accounts from various providers, but we select the Microsoft one. Then we click on create. So here the resource group is already selected since I started creating the storage account from the resource group itself. If you want, you can click on create new and you can create a new resource group. Since I've already selected a resource group and I'm not creating on new, so here I give uh, the name of the storage account. Everything should be small, and here I select, yeah. So this name is taken. This name should always be unique. The name of the storage account should always be unique. Region is selected is TS2. Performance can be standard, no problem. Redundancy, actually there are three types of redundancies. LRS, four types: LRS, GRS, ZRS, and GZRS. Actually, the main three main are the first three. Now, since I'm creating it for demo purpose, so I will use LRS. I do not need GRS or ZRS. For production environment, it will be good if you create GRS because the state file then will be replicated in many places. So I select just LRS and then I move to advanced. Here we do not have to do anything. Network, now since it is for this tutorial, I'll just put it enable public access for from all networks, but actually we should not do that, because if you enable public access from all networks, then that means the storage account content can be accessible through internet from any machine. Okay, so we should always choose enable private access from selected virtual networks and IP address, but in that case we should have proper virtual networks and IP address, subnets, private endpoints, everything in place. Next, data protection, nothing to choose over here. Encryption, nothing to choose. Tags, so here we have to put tags. Now I'm not putting any tags over here. So once we go to review, if the validation passes, we'll be able to create. But here it will show validation failed because there are certain policies involved in this particular account which enforces me to create tags. So I will not be able to create it. And also, since I already have a storage account in place, I will not be creating it. I'll just show you the steps to create the storage account. So when we hit create, we will get a storage account. Now this is the storage account that we get created, and inside that, if we go, so after creating the storage account, our next step is to create a container. We'll be creating a container. So here one container is already created. If when we will create a storage account from scratch, there will be no container, so we will have to click on plus, and there we will enter the name of a container, and that's it, private, and then we will hit create. So a new container will be created. That's all we need for creating a backend for storing our state file. Now once the storage account is created, we have to put the details of the storage account in the provider.tf file. So details remains the name, the subscription in which the storage account is there, the resource group, the name of the storage account, and the name of the container, and the name of the state file. So the state file name we can give it directly in the provider.tf file. Automatically the state file will be created. We do not need to create the file explicitly in the container through the portal. So that's all I have for today. If you have any questions, you put it in the comment section. I'll try to answer it as much as possible. And in our upcoming videos, I will provision a simple Azure infrastructure using Terraform script. Uh, yeah, that's all for today. Kindly subscribe and comment to my channel. Thank you.